Okay. Everyone, welcome to today. This is the ASU President's Candidates Debate. I am Megan and I will be hosting the debate today. I am part of the media team, so this is all being run by the media team, which you will all be working with very closely if you get elected. So first off, can you please do a little short introduction, just your name, what year are you, what are you studying, just so that everyone knows who you are. We'll just go down the row. And please be sure to speak into the mics. I think they take it out. Yeah.
So I'm Leo. I study maths and physics. I'm final year. I've been at Bath for 4 years. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Hi, I'm Angus. I'm your SU Sports Officer. I graduated here with Master in Electronic Engineering and Space Science. And yeah, that's me.
I am Dennis. I am Dennis. I study maths and I'm a final year. I was in placement last year, so I'm technically.
Hello, I'm Yitz. I'm a final year business student. Unlike Leo, I've only spent 2.5 years in Bath due to 2 placements and an exchange in Mexico, but very glad to be here.
Hi. Hello. I'm Rajit. I'm a master's student and I study management. So yeah, that's all about this.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rajit. I'm a master's student. I study management and yeah, I'm pretty new to Bath as well. So,
Okay, so I will just do a quick explanation of how today will work, but you all should be aware of it, but just for our audience. I am going to ask a series of questions, and then I will choose a candidate at randomly each time, and then each candidate will have 1 minute to give their answer or their debate to my question, and then up to 2 candidates will be able to challenge any point that the first candidate has made, and then the first candidate will have 30 seconds to answer each challenge. And if no candidate challenges the first candidate, then I could also bring up any challenge if I think anything was missed. And then we will move on to the next candidate. And then after all 5 of you have answered the question, we will move on to the next question. So there will probably be about 4 to 5 questions, maybe more, depending on timing. And then after that, we will just do closing statements just to really draw through your manifestos and your points. Also, if you want to challenge someone, please just raise your hand. I will choose who gets to challenge a candidate by random if there's multiple people. I will prioritize people who haven't challenged a candidate yet to give everyone an opportunity for their voice to be heard. So we will start off, if everyone is ready, with the first question. If you want me to repeat a question at any time, please let me know. I'm happy to read them again. So the first question is, you represent the Students' Union on many university committees. How would you decide which issues to prioritize, and how would you make sure you are reflecting students' views? Everyone clear? Dennis, why don't we start with you?
It's a very tough question to start with. So when it comes to prioritizing different issues, I suppose you would prioritize primarily on first, how long you have to solve the issue, and second, how many students it affects. So when you're talking about maybe mental health versus election notes, obviously mental health is a much more pressing issue for some students, whereas election notes affects a large proportion. There's a give and take there, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, you don't need to use your full minute now. Does anyone have any challenges or questions to that? Okay, that's just a warm up. I'll move on to the next candidate for now. Why don't we do Rajit? Do you want me to repeat the question? Okay. So you represent the Students' Union on many university committees. How would you decide which issues to prioritize, and how would you make sure you are reflecting students' views? Start.
firstly, before I start off, I'd like to agree with Dennis's first pointer that it is an incredibly difficult question. But I would definitely focus more on the student life
but like that's a very generic and vague pointer, but more about the sort of activities that they have in accommodation spaces, because this is something that I've noticed in a lot of accommodations, at least the studio ones, people don't interact with each other. They don't have enough activities and events to keep them engaged. And also, I'd like to focus on well-being, even though there's the Be Well app, there's a lot of initiatives currently taking place. But ideally, I'd like to say that, a simple conversation just with your peers can solve a lot of things. So yeah, that would be one of my 2 pointers that I'd like to stress on.
Yeah. Does anyone have a challenge to that? I think I would just ask with your point of looking at accommodations, is that specifically on campus? Because what about students in HMOs and private accommodation? They could also, struggle with activities and feel included.
I solely agree with you there, but my view is based on the accommodation that I've been to, basically the city accommodation. So I live in Scalapur. I've noticed these small loopholes around there, and at least in the campus accommodations, I feel the students are a lot more engaging with each other. Firstly, you go to the library together, you have food together, you go to classes together. But in these city accommodations, you don't even know who's living like a floor below you. So
Yeah.
I feel that's a very interesting pointer to just ensure that students
That's
well-being
time,
is taken
sorry.
care of.
That's your 30 seconds. Does anyone have a second challenge? Okay, I will move on to Angus then for the same question, please.
Right, so in terms of prioritising, so you need to understand kind of what are the purpose of the different committees, what are the purpose of different, when do you bring certain topics up? So, you've got Senate, that's where you bring it for education, you've got Council, you've got CAT, edict, understanding that you can cover all these different priorities, it's just about knowing when and where to. And in terms of, ensuring you're championing that student voice, there'll be things from just student testimony, things that come across, working with the other officers, we know the cost of living exists. And actually, it's about knowing, okay, I'm going to this meeting, do I have all the information? Am I confident enough that I can represent that student body? And if not, then you have to go out and get that information. Where do you go and find individual testimony, a wider, dare I say the word survey, we're all enough of those as it is, but it's understanding the limit to what you know and where you fill those gaps in. And yeah, again, in terms of prioritising specific things, it really depends on, the timeline you need to get it fixed by, how many people it affects, what opportunities you have to do it. Say, if you've got Senate next week, that education point can be done that week. You don't have to worry about doing it right now this second. You've got time to focus on other things.
That's time, yes. Thank you. Is there any challenges to that? Yeah? Sorry, names. I'll do Yets first.
With your point about different stakeholders having input on different groups, would you go straight to the officers? Would you go through student leaders? What would be your roadmap to gather this information? Because as the point that you made, it's very hard to gather this actual information quickly, efficiently.
As a reminder, you have 30 seconds to answer.
Yeah, so his first point, are any other officers working on it? Because you've got 5 other officers who are all working across the board. Have they already done work, got the information there? Have previous officers done it? Do we have data already? If not, then yeah, okay, who are the groups being affected? Can we go and speak to those student leaders, those committees, and so on? Or if it's one of those really wide, broad things, then yeah, it's a case of going, well, can we do an open poll? Can we get that information where it's a standard rate? So you kind of start small and work out until you have that information. If you start big, you're going to burn yourself out and you maybe miss the key point. So
Yeah,
it's just,
that's time.
Yeah.
Yeah? And then Danish, you also had a challenge.
You mentioned surveying students, but you also, and I think we all understand that there's a lot of student surveys that go around anyway, and not many people respond. Do you have any way to resolve that issue?
So I will clarify, there's a difference in surveying in the sense of getting the information, obviously sending out specific surveys. The survey map calendar is already crammed. So again, that's where the other ways that can you have a stand out in the parade, have people just drop by, write on a post-it note, stick it in a box. Like, those are ways to survey the student body without getting them to fill in the survey in their inbox. So it's being creative around information.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next, I will do Leo to answer the question. Do you want me to repeat the question? Are you okay? Yeah, so the question was, you represent students on many university committees. How would you decide which issues to prioritize? And how would you make sure you're affecting students' views?
So I think I would echo a lot of what's been said already, but I think that personally, I think things should be addressed in terms of priorities, and we all have each other's priorities on our manifestos about what we would like to tackle. And like Angus said also, it's important to consider what committees have influence over what specific things in the student body. But at the end of the day, there are always going to be issues that are more pressing for a wide variety of students. And I think those are the issues that really should be tackled, like the priorities, cost of living, like Angus said, housing, mental health. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's all good. I'll do Rajit first for the challenge.
So my question was more along the lines of your pointer about lobbying instead. So you mentioned like a pointer about like having 9 to 10 month contracts, let's say lobbying, house contracts. But how much of a leverage does SU really have, and what sort of incentive can you offer if you were in term?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and thank you. When it comes to the lobbying aspect, I think the university has a lot of influence when it comes to this, because as a student body, we provide Bath with so much money in accommodation. All of these landlords are thriving off of the students, and this is their income stream, a big part of their income stream. So we do have a lot of influence over them, and then when it comes to our incentives, we could definitely bring up things like priority on certain landlords that would sort of address this issue, like 9 to 10 months. But there are a variety of many ways that you can do it. That's just one. Another thing could be like...
That's fine, sorry. And then, yes, did you also have a challenge, yeah?
So I think the point raised from a lot of people about how they would use university infrastructure has been very good. But I would argue a lot of the points that we brought up in our manifestos would not be tackled through those boards. How will you look to interact with the local council, with Bath SPISU, even with the Liberal Democrats? What would be your roadmap of that for issues like housing, etc.?
When it comes to housing and talking about the politics of it, like Liberal Democrats, I don't think it's necessarily a council issue, because these rent increases and this is happening across the board in many student cities, like York, like Bath, and this is something that is important on a national level. So you don't have much influence over the council doesn't have that much influence over the student houses and the rents. And so I think it's more about incentive to the landlords themselves and addressing them directly as a student body. Like also another incentive would be small increments within those 9 to 10 months, but enough to mitigate
That's
the
fine,
issue.
sorry. Okay, thank you. Then we have Jets last to answer the question if you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think a lot of it has been discussed, but I think it's vital that you focus on the points you presented in your manifesto. That's what the students have put you there to do, so that will be the things that are specifically focused on. But I think a really important point is, even if your SU staff or SU president, is to keep your ears to the ground. Angus raised a really good point that there's so many exchanges that you have as a student that raises an idea of an issue that you never knew existed because you don't experience it. I also think, you've got to stay active, you've got to be approachable. Utilize surveys, focus groups if they work, but we have the infrastructure of societies to be able to reach students better than just through Outlook. So we have to use that, we have to use our student leaders, lead mentors, academic reps, etc. to get as much information as we can. It may not be quick, but that can be used for years to come to inform so many decisions within the SU.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have a challenge for that? I would just ask as a side question. You mentioned that you want to be approachable. How would you go about trying to be approachable to students and to staff members?
So I think it's very much about like just showing your face, being there, being open to have a conversation, not big timing anyone. I mean, Benji is a great representation of this. Anytime you see him, he's willing to have a chat, he's willing to talk about it, he shows that he's passionate. I think that's really key. You've got to show that you're really passionate about the issues, and then people will trust you to talk more. Going to society events, just being visible on the parade, etc.
Yes, thank you very much. We will now move on to the second question. Well done, everyone. You made it through the first round. So question 2. What do you think is the number one issue facing Bath students that you would want to change? And why are you specifically best suited to tackle this issue compared to your other candidates? We will start with Leo, if that's okay.
So, when it comes to the number one issue, I think really it is affordability for students right now, because the cost of living is ridiculous. Housing prices are ridiculous, and so are bus fares. And not enough is being done on this issue. In terms, we do try to address it, but it keeps resurfacing. So when it comes to this, I've proposed in my manifesto a few points that would be to lobby directly with the landlords and the letting agents, to also deal directly with Fast Bus, proposing a new initiative that is like the points-based bus pass with cashback. That would give more ownership to finances for students and to take ownership of your finances rather than giving power to the landlords and the letting agents continuously.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have a challenge? Yeah, Angus?
So I like the principle actually goes straight to the landlord, straight to the source. But how do you manage that? Because there are thousands of landlords, all different agents, all different, some are not, some are single. So how do you make sure all those landlords are accountable, keep track of all those landlords? Where's that resource coming from, and how are you promoting that to all these different people who aren't held by one central body?
It's a very good question. I think like making use of your power and influence. So, for example, the council, like Yit was saying as well, is an important bridge when it comes to landlords, and it is a way to sort of mass produce this sort of sentiment from the student body to the landlords themselves. Yes, there is so many of them, but landlords, their whole thing is about students, and they will listen if we back our students.
Next time, yeah. Thank you. Any more challenges? I will move on to Yit's thing for the same question.
Thank you very much. So I think Leo hit the nail on the head with the issue being housing and affordability, but I think Leo didn't really put forward why he would be the best person to represent that issue, but I can definitely put that forward. I've met and have worked with Vera Webhouse. I've also met council members, been to council meetings, been to our shared community meetings, and know them quite well. I've also got industry experience in the real world through my placements of doing research and understanding how to put forward ideas eloquently to get change done. I think, again, Angus raised a good point that it's complex and that there are a lot of landlords, but as Angus mentioned in his manifesto, the council is putting forward the HMO ban, so clearly they have the power of the landlords, so that should be the point of entry that we go to represent students.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any challenges to that? Yeah, Regine?
Hi. So you basically mentioned this pointer about a landlord rating, if I'm not wrong. So how would you ensure legal compliance there and avoid any defamation risks?
So, thank you very much for the question. If you read my manifesto, it specifically states that it would be anonymous, that it would be, that the student would be anonymous, and so then, my understanding of defamation law is not amazing, but there isn't really something to trace them back. Additionally, on that point, I think someone made a very good point to me, and this shows listening to your constituents, that it wouldn't just be landlords, it would also be agencies, so that would be something that would be worked into the final plan when it would be implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more challenges? No? I will go to Dennis then for the same question, please.
So I'm not going to be saying much new. I think it's pretty obvious that the biggest issue that students face is cost of living. I don't think anyone's going to argue on that. In terms of my support, I think I've got a very financial background, so I think in terms of students, obviously there's the big issues, there's the housing crisis, but in terms of day-to-day life, things that we can actually, as a university, help with every day, I think it's important to get stuff like financial information, financial training out to general students. So they know that they can track their finances and go, and they can, I dropped my phone, they can preempt issues going forwards. That's what happens.
Yeah, thank you for that. you, Leo. I'll give Leo the first challenge.
Well, I wonder, you mentioned that you want to give sort of obviously financial, like health training, and I kind of want to ask what that looks like. Because when it comes to house prices, it's simply just like paying your rent, that's the issue. And that will always be a priority in the list of what students will pay. It's not about priority, it's about what people are spending money on. The issue is always there regardless.
Of course, I agree.
I will.
Okay, yeah, I do agree with your point that housing is, of course, a much bigger issue, and there is systemic issues behind that we have to work on, like Yitz has said, to do with working with the members of parliament and stuff like that. I've wanted to take like a different approach on it, if you get what I mean. So that means training students on things like budgeting, making sure that they can preempt these problems ahead of time and speak to the university so they can get this sorted out before it becomes an issue.
Yeah, thank you. Was there another challenge, I think? Yeah, yes?
So I think, as all student leaders know, the hardest part of everything is engagement. And you've kind of brought up this idea that it's going to be huge and it's going to help so many people. But how would you communicate that to the student base and make it that it's a functional platform that is utilized instead of something that is just there, it's not communicated well? I mean, in my manifesto I touched upon there's points, there's schemes that benefit international students that aren't known about, and there's so much about communication that I would be working on. So how would you do that?
I think that's a really good point, and I have mentioned this a couple times in my manifesto about a few different issues. That I think a big issue that the SU struggles with is getting information out to students. So in regards to that, I think what I want to do going forwards is make sure that students have access to a variety of routes. Currently it's just emails, and they're very big, they're bulky, they're very easy to ignore, if you get what I mean. Having maybe smaller information available through offices, Instagram and stuff like that, on various social media, would make it a lot more accessible to the general student population.
Thank you. We will move on to Rajit for the same question, please.
It's actually interesting how Dennis put his last pointer about like emails, about communication platforms, which is exactly why I felt the need to mention about a centralized student dashboard that I plan on implementing, which means you're gonna have all your emails, updates, reminders in one place, and you can choose to be a part of which conversation you want to actually keep a track of, so that the more important thing here is so that you don't miss out on important stuff, and so that you can at least navigate your way through, at least knowing which conversations you want to be a part of. So that's why.
We'll do Dennis first.
I think the idea of the centralized dashboard is really good. I was thinking, because obviously we've got a few students already that work on programs like this. Obviously we've got the Fruit cohort who I've been speaking to a lot recently. I was wondering if you anticipated this being an SU thing, or if you wanted to get students themselves involved in making something like that.
So my answer to that question would solely involve the SU, because SU basically has control over the students, and they are more likely to get a conversation out of students rather than them implementing and them following a very specific procedure that way. But I feel that SU can directly look into this. They can look into these very specific platforms where you can just be like, it could be a new social media app. We could just make it fun. We could make sure that at least the students keep a track of their messages rather than emails. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Leo and Yitz had it, so I'll go with Leo if that's okay.
I guess my point was also very similar to Dennis in the sense that it was more about how did you plan on sort of assembling it, and really about the infrastructure idea. So obviously this is going to be a program, and there'll be a lot behind that. That is maybe something that's outside the technical experience of people in the SU. And when it comes to that, I also wanted to challenge you a bit on the idea, because how would you sort of go about rating what's more important on the centralized dashboard? And because we already have Outlook.
I'll have to stop you there, sorry. Yes, Rajit, so you can answer that in 30
Thank
seconds.
you for the question, firstly. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this very same pointer. So, ideally, if you see these social media apps like Telegram or something like that, and when you mentioned that pointer about like which conversations you want to be a part of, the dashboard will specifically mention, okay, is it academic, is it from the SU, is it from the well-being, is it from any other department, let's say, and there you can just click onto the department and then just select which conversation, or you can maybe like flag conversations or
That's
something.
time, sorry. Thank you. We will lastly go to Angus for the same question, please.
So, I mean, yeah, cost of living. It's a nationwide problem. We're not going to solve overnight. But actually, one area I think can be solved, which impacts massively, is we need, that greater presence in the city. Right now, if you want to come to lectures, you want to go to happy hour, you want to go to any kind of activity, you've got to buy that bus fare. You've got to come to campus. Sure, you can walk and so on, but you've got to get that bus fare basically. So, where someone could go, right, I'm going to lectures, going to go to happy hour and see my mates on campus, we need to be able to emulate that in town. You can watch your lectures at home, and there's a happy hour at an SU venue in the city and so on. What that means now is you're getting rid of that bus fare completely. Forget for any, you'll lower the price, which we're paying the arse. You're just getting rid of that bus fare because they don't have to buy it in the first place. And you begin to emulate from that. Actually, it's not just about going, how do we make things cheaper? Because again, national problem, you can't just make things cheaper. How can you emulate the offer that we have here at a lower cost? So, investing in an SU space in the city, emulate the Pug and Tub, something like that, more study spaces, ensure that students have the right to choose, do I go to campus today? I want to go to campus, sure, I'll take that bus fare, otherwise I'm going to stay in town, it's more affordable.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have challenges? Yes, I have yes.
Thank you. So as we know, Bath is a World Heritage Site, which means that there is less opportunity to build new things, get planning permission, etc. So how would you combat that? Firstly, from my knowledge of friends within the council, there's a lot of resistance to student expansion, and also that it feels that residents aren't being represented in these changes. So how would you combat that? The point that you raised about bus fares, if you live in Southdown or even in Oldfield, you might be getting a bus there anyways, whereas you would get a youth rate would be the same cost. And potentially if they're in the city with higher rents,
I'll have
things
to stop you there, sorry.
So first things first, I'm not talking about building a brand new building. Option one is utilise the spaces we've got. We've got Virgil, we've got Carpenter. Can we better utilise the spaces? Option two is partnership with a local business. Are there venues already there that are, we can partnership with? And then I guess the third option is there, do we need to look at a new space, which again, unlikely. So, there's so many ways that can be done. So what's the second part? It was, yes, so I mean, you say about the residents. Students are 30% of the residents. So, that's some of the council are warming up to and aware of. Obviously, you have that, the 70% who aren't students. But actually, students
That's
aren't
fine,
such a big
sorry.
part of Bath.
Thank you. And then I have a second challenge from Leon.
Well, I would echo exactly about the point of having to expand into the city, but I would ask you also, what are your plans on lobbying the university to do that? Because obviously they might pose a big challenge when it comes to this, which is a massive investment on their part. Places like Carpenter House are already accommodation filled because they don't have any space either to accommodate students right now in the city. There are people having to go into hostels because they don't get accommodation guaranteed, even though it's their first offer.
Sorry, are you able to provide a bit? Am I allowed to ask for clarification on the point? Is there
Just quickly, yeah.
clarification? Obviously, there's lots of troubles coming from the uni. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Well, I guess I mainly ask, if they have pushback towards the idea of investing more into the city. We used to have Hot Dartmouth, for example, and they cancelled that, maybe 2 years ago. So, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, this is not, for the first part, this is an SU investment. This is the SU saying we as the SU are going to invest in something. The university, we had these conversations and our strategies. We want student life to be bigger. We want our, twist at our student manifesto they fully support. They are very much on board with the idea that our student life needs to expand in the city. So I do not expect any pushback really from the uni. So sure, using Carpenter and Virgil, there'll be big discussions there. That's an option. I'm not saying that's the only way. So it's having a conversation with you. Can we use Virgil and Carpenter? If there's pushback, we discuss it and look for alternatives. But I don't expect the university to have
That's
massive
time, yeah.
pushback based on our conversations.
Thank you. That is the end of our second question round. So I will now move on to the third question, and this is a scenario-based question. So, as SU president, you will sit on the university's board of governors. If a paper gets brought to this board proposing an increase in student rates, how will you balance your duty to students and your duty to the university? Your duty to the students and to the university, because you represent sort of both of them. You are the student voice, but you also have to answer to the university. So how do you balance that? I will, yeah. Increase in rate. Rate.
How would you balance
The student voice and your duty to the university. We will start with Rajit, if that's okay.
I feel as the SU president, I have to be definitely considerate of the fact that okay, students are equally important as well as the faculty. But I believe that an increase in rent. So I basically tackled a problem like that, and in my manifesto also I mentioned a form called friction forms. It basically, if you have any problem about, let's say, or an increase in rent, so you can log any such information about that on the friction form, and it directly goes to the department that can fix it. So ideally, my response to the increase in rent question would be that how many students are actually affected by it, and if at all this SU can actually do anything about the inflation rate. But that's about it.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any challenges? Yeah, I guess.
So you mentioned this way of collecting student information, but perhaps I misunderstood. But actually, how are you balancing, the needs of the university and actually the fact that the university needs to survive, and how are you balancing the information of what is key to the university not crumbling versus the information collected?
Think about that very specifically, balancing the needs of the student and balancing the needs of faculty. For that matter, I feel that the students will have a stronger say, and being a part of student union, I feel the faculty will be equally considerate of student requirements, even if they are a little unruly. But ideally, I feel that the power that students have in general about feedback, about student experience, weighs a little more heavier than faculty.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other challenges or just this? Yeah, here you can challenge.
I guess you mentioned, I may have misheard, but you say like, oh, you would address it based on how many students it would affect and like see whether university has influence over the inflation rates, but that's just not possible. The university has no influence over inflation rates. The university has no influence over rent increases. It's simply about how you're going to tackle it. Sorry, what was your first point again? Yeah. Well, I guess this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you have to give an answer to his question.
I was saying that obviously the university has no influence over the rent increases, so it's more about, and it's not even about whether students are going to be part of it. It's about how you're going to address the issue. The students are already part of the student union. It's the university doesn't have influence over inflation. So does that change any of your answer in that respect?
So the students are well aware of an increase in, let's say, a yearly rate for that matter. The rent prices will go up every year. The food prices will go up every year. I think the students also have to be better prepared for that. But to support these, let's say, initiatives, we can talk about specific clubbed up deals or discounts that way. But like more ideally put forward, we can offer more for like money's worth rather than just like addressing like a very specific rent problem.
That's time, sorry. Thank Thank you. I will pose the same question to Angus.
Sorry, would you mind repeating it real quick?
Yeah. I'll just do a summary of it, but the university has brought a paper proposing an increase to student rent, and how are you balancing your duty to students with your duty to the university?
Yeah, so I mean, again, fundamentally, it's kind of, you know, your duty to the university is the same. It is your duty to the students through that channel. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's kind of thing. Well, why is this change happening? This is on-campus accommodation. Why is it going up? Is this, you know, in the environment where higher education across the sector, universities are struggling with survival? You know, is this imperative to survive the uni? If the answer is not yes, there, then actually that's the question. Well, actually, in that case, why are we doing this? It's a massive impact to students. And I guess irrelevant of the implications, so on, ensuring that the student voice, that the student interest in what, you know, that the students have been considered must be there from the top to the bottom. So it's just making a strong balance of being responsible as a governor of the university, that you are there for the university's survival, channeled through the student voice.
Is there challenges to that? Yeah? Yes, you can go.
So you've mentioned kind of bringing forward student voice. How would you balance the student voice you're receiving with also being able to keep a perspective that's away from students in a way, as your role as a trustee or on the governorship? I think it's obviously imperative that student voice is there, but obviously you have to view it at a high level to be able to then put it through. And even if, I'll extend the question, if there was something that went against students that people had pushed for, how would you put that to the students in the best way?
I mean, so here's the thing, as an officer, you'll wear many hats. You're a trustee, you are a student, you are representing, and it's genuinely just a skill you have to pick up about how do you just separate yourself and stay, you know, distinguish between your different opinions and your own agenda, the student agenda, the university agenda, and that's just something you have to learn to roll. That's something I'm pretty confident I've picked up very well. So just understand, okay, let's think holistically, what's a university problem, what's a student problem? And so what was the follow-up to the second bit? It was,
If a decision went against what you had heard from the student voice, how would you then communicate that to your base that put you in?
I mean, you've got to be able to justify it. Any decision you make, you have to be able to stand up and say, I made this decision on your behalf, here is why, this is why I made it. And there are times I've had to say to a student that we can't do this thing
That's
because
time,
of
sorry.
cost of and so on. Just being honest with you.
Do we have any other challenges? No, I will pose the same question to Leo then.
I think, if I've understood this correctly, you mentioned that the university is increasing the rent price, so it's on its student accommodation. So I guess I view it as the student union is a body that represents students and holds the university accountable on their actions. So that means that we are here and responsible to protect our students, and if those rent increases are unaccounted for any facts, and it's important to consider why they might have increased rent so we can mitigate it as well. But if it does adversely affect our students, it is a matter for us to speak up and challenge the university.
Thank you. Are there any challenges to that? No, we will move on. Oh, yes, go ahead.
So I may be wrong, but at least from my understanding of it, a lot of students feel that a lot of internal university boards are very opaque, and there isn't really an understanding of what they do, how they're affecting us, and then there's just a decision that comes from above. How would you, as SU president, increase transparency to detail to students why these decisions are made, what you put forward, etc.? So similar to what I said to Agnes, but I think it's a very pressing point that a lot of students are feeling.
I love the sort of regular updates that the university has been doing, but I also understand that not everyone knows what the university is doing regardless. Transparency is all about showcasing what we do, so posting that more visibly is important. In of itself, regardless of whether this is a question of how many boards we have to address their separate issues, we're a union at the end of the day which represents students to defend students, and that is the principle that students must understand about us.
Thank you very much. Are there any other challenges? I will move on to Jets then for the same question.
Thank you very much. So I think, first point, we've been trusted by the students to represent the students. So you have to put the students first. But you also have to do it in a way that isn't combative. It's not about winning, it's about creating change that benefits all. And you would bring forward points that you've gathered from students in the ways that I've discussed in previous questions, surveys, focus groups, on the ground research, etc., and hold the people accountable. But you need to use the team around you. We have, as Angus mentioned earlier, you have 5 student officers around you to be able to understand, okay, this is really going to affect students, how can we put that forward? I think a point I raised in my challenge that I think is so important is transparency. I feel that how Leo put it wasn't the best, but there are these bodies that no one knows about and no one knows what they do. And if we can report about how they've conducted what we put forward, I think it would gain trust in the union. And I mean, I want to put the union back in the SU, so it's very important to me.
Thank you very much. Are there any other challenges, or is it just Leo? We will go with Leo then.
I guess when it came to addressing the actual thing, you're saying, if I understand correctly, you want to bring visibility to exactly every single board that has decision-making power or like influence over the university. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying we need to bring competition, and I totally agree that this is about negotiation at the end of the day, and you bring about a positive spirit and a positive attitude to sort of negotiate and work with everyone at the university because they are our partners. It's our university at the end of the day. But I question you specifically on when students see the SU, is it about every single board they see, what they do, or is it about what the SU stands for?
I think it's, of course, both. I think that if we reflect how we are conducting ourselves on the board, then it will improve the image overall. And I think, again, I'm going to loop back to this point, but even I've been on Summit, I know a lot of high-profile student leaders, they don't know what goes on, and they're the people who are very locked into what's happening in the university. So if you just picked out a student that's in the Edge Cafe right in the corner right now, they will have no clue what the SU officers are doing to provide them. And I think this notion of, there's so much we can do, we shouldn't do any of it, I think is a very ill-advised position and shouldn't be something that a president should reflect. I think we should try and
I'll
achieve
have to stop you there. Thank you. Then we have Dennis left to answer this final question.
Okay, so I'm going to be building off a lot. I'm sorry, I think Leo's new to this conversation a lot. I think it's important to know what it means to need money. I think that's a very different thing when you're talking about students as opposed to when you're talking about the university. Obviously, a student needs money to feed themselves and keep a roof over their head, whereas the university could be sending that money to any number of places. So when you're discussing something like this, first, you need to know if that money is necessary or if it's just funding something that some students would enjoy. If it is necessary, then obviously I think you should put the students first as much as possible. You should make sure that they know what's happening as soon as possible. See a lot during the debate and how we can go about that.
Yeah, does anyone have challenges to that? I will do Leo first.
Again, I guess the only thing, I think the thing is visibility is so important to understand what we're doing to address the issue. But I guess when the university raises rent increases, prices, that's something that they need to see a concerted and coherent voice about what we're doing, not what every single specific aspect of the SU is doing with regards to that. I guess that's my point of clarification from my side. I would like to hear more from you.
So I did have this thought earlier as well while you and Yes were discussing. I don't think it's a point of making sure that every single board releases information about every single decision they make in a way that's digestible for students. I think what's most important is making sure that every student knows exactly how it's going to affect them and when it's going to affect them. And that could be something a lot more centralized like we've discussed beforehand.
And then, Jens, did you want to challenge? Yeah?
So you kind of touched upon the point of whether what a board is looking at funding lies is important. I would argue that if they're looking to increase rent, then it's very important and it's something that they're really pushing for. So I think this is more a question of how would you, in that situation, use that judgment? And you've kind of said, student funding is very important, you can do trade-offs. how would you represent that? How would you then communicate that to your base of people that maybe there's a resource that they really love that is now being cut? And then Angus put it that he's done that through a sports officer. He's a key part of being an officer. So yeah, how would you tackle that issue?
Okay, so I think that this question is very context dependent, obviously, because it depends exactly on where that funding is going to. But I think the most important thing is to make sure that you have a solid understanding of how the students feel about it beforehand. That might not be going through sending out forms to everyone. How do you feel about X? Would you mind if we instead increased your rent so that we could pay for it? But as long as you have like a genuine understanding of it, then they should sit up with that.
Thank you. That was the end of our third question. And I was informed we will continue until 10 past, so we have 10 more minutes. So I will pose you one more question. And because we only have 10 minutes, I think I will only allow one challenge per question. And I will prioritize Angus, Dennis, and Rajit for challenges because they have the least. So your final question is something I think has been mentioned, and I will give you the opportunity now to talk about it more. But buses get mentioned every year, and every year the SU try and sort of fix the problem. They've done a good job this year, but still students complain every year about long queues and high ticket prices. Is this something you are going to prioritize, or do you think it is an issue that is out of your hands as an SU president? Everyone clear? And I think I will start with Angus for the first question.
Yeah, so I guess there are two key parts of it. One is cost, one is the timings and actually availability. So unfortunately, we're just direct cost. There's not much that can be done to just reduce it. They are a private company and so on. The real question there is how do you subsidise it and simulate a reduction? So your first thing is, for the third of freshers who are living in the same accommodation, should their bus fare be included in that? That's a question to ask. Campus travel plan doing some work, and they want to increase the cost of parking and stuff like that. So can that increase in parking permit money be used to subsidise buses for students who need it? So it's about finding solutions that aren't just, I'm going to make it cheaper. In terms of the timing, the key thing is kind of looking at that heat map of first of all, peak times, can we get more on there? But also actually, there's late nights, early mornings where people have a lot of, especially when lectures are being bumped earlier and bumped later and activities as well. Ensuring that first bus, and that's the bit you really can influence with first bus, there's regular meetings that as a president I have with them, is just let's ensure the timetable maps the student interest, not just based on what the students wanted 10 years ago.
Thank you. Are there any challenges to that? If it's just you, yes, you can challenge.
So I think a point that I've seen raised with a lot of friends of mine and people I know is the buses being inconsistent during out-of-term dates, especially during the summer when there are still people who are working or on internships, etc. How would you work to, you touched upon the schedule, how would you tell First Bus we need these buses?
Yeah, fundamentally, the problem is everything's built on an undergraduate structure. Undergrads, the entire bus schedule, the sports schedule, everything's built on undergrad. So actually, it's about making sure the council, the university, everyone understands the implication that we do have thousands of postgrad students who are here all summer. They need the shops open, they need regular buses, they need sports activities, they need things to do. And that's a piece of work I've been working on very heavily with the sports department, the sports teams throughout this year, and I want to continue. It's understanding that it's again something you go, for the past 10, 15 years it's been fine, undergrads love it, yes, but what about the postgrads? We're in a different world now, things are changing, we need to make sure those things are adapted, and that is lobbied at the highest level and the lowest.
Thank you very much. I will pose the same question to Dennis.
So, to an extent, I do think that this is an unsolvable problem in that students going forwards are always going to complain about long queues and high tickets. It's not like prices are just going to magically go down. But I do think that there's a lot that the SU can work with on that. When it's to do with obviously out-of-term tickets are a big problem right now. I think most importantly, you should be working with students. So we've had projects previously like Froome, for example, for the Free Room Society. Not society. But I think obviously the students have a much more on the ground view of this. I feel if we can get them to design something like a heat map going forward, we could much more accurately determine when and where buses are needed and then bring those into the weekly meetings that we have with First Bus.
Thank you very much. Do we have any challenges to that? No to Angus, Dennis, Reggie? Okay, good, so you can go.
So I think a recurring point that I've seen through this is that a lack of understanding of infrastructure that was already available. I know that Bus Times has a bus tracker that you can be able to look at these, look at the times, etc., see where the buses are. For me, a key point is making these maybe more relevant or unknown resources more relevant. So you've kind of touched upon like Froome, very good thing, but how are you going to bring these maybe potentially antiquated systems or underused systems to make the current reality better?
And we're back to transparency again. How do we get information to students that they don't have, that they should have? So we've discussed this a lot. I feel like there's a lot to be said once again about maybe getting a centralized system for stuff like this and promoting this, because I've never seen stuff like this promoted on the university website, for example. So putting something, just like a notice up there saying that these resources are available might help a lot of students.
Thank you very much. I will pose the same question to Jens then.
Thank you very much. I think, as all the candidates have shown, this is a very universal issue. So, of course, as an SU president, you have to work towards it. And again, we have a working relationship already. Maybe in previous years we didn't, but Benji has created an actionable change, and we can work towards that. I think points that I've laid out in my manifesto is to lobby First Bus to reform the U2 bus route to potentially go back through Oldfield, even just for drop-off outside of school times. I think that would work to increase student welfare, especially I thought of introducing the idea of a hopper fare that they already have in London. Potentially there could be something to institute a cap on prices, because if people aren't aware, the actual national cap is £3. So even though everyone complains about the price, it could get worse. I think, again, transparency is more about communication. There are things that we have that we don't use or people don't use. Another point I want to raise is that after 2029, I think, WECA will be in charge of all bus routes, so potentially creating a relationship with that mayor in advance would allow us to have more lobbying power in the future.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a challenge? Yes, Angus?
So, Jules, you mentioned there too, talking about kind of like instating the old bus routes and stuff, like, but is that something that has been, will make a difference? Because the feedback and the data we have shows that the reform of the bus routes, the U3, the U4, how they've changed the clear congestion, actually, even though there's still queues and stuff, has improved the quality and regularity of the buses. We're now talking, there's also a talk to the U6 coming in, which is going to be like a London road-based service. So are there alternatives you can provide are there ways you might want to explore adapting those bus routes rather than just bringing in old bus routes that were removed because they were
I
inefficient?
should start there. Yeah? Yeah, you can answer.
So, at least from what I understand, I would argue that the U2 route going into Oldfield was not removed for inefficiency's sake. It was removed because of the impact on the students, the school, on, what I'm talking about. So, it's more of a question of being able to bring actual data and research, which I've had experience of in the commercial sector, to say, here is the heat map, here is where people are going, here's how you benefit, here's how you have more staff, and I think more ticket bought, etc. But again, talking with students, that's what I've been doing for as long as I can remember. They haven't...
That's time, sorry. Thank you. I will put the same question to Rajit, please.
I feel the answer to that is very subjective, and if I was doing this if I had to think of an answer, my answer would be a sum of like all of the pointers that have been mentioned, but more ideally put so, I would speak to First Bus, but ensure like a new student-friendly rate based on the distance travel, not just like a fixed rate. And secondly, I would speak to them about bulk sales and have a bulk agreement between like the operator and the university, so that even their minimum sales of like, let's say, bus passes are constant. They are not missing out on the business. But at the same time, we also have a slightly lower rate, which of course,
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anyone have a challenge to that? Yes, Angus?
So, in that scenario, essentially what you're asking the university is massive investments into correct me if I'm misunderstood, massive investment into investing in bus tickets. How are those tickets distributed, or how do those students actually end up? How do those tickets end up with the students? Because that model says the university got loads of bus tickets. What happens? If I understand you correct.
So ID, even at the moment, how you book like a bus pass, let's say, is via the app, and whatever your details, and we know at least like 55% of the students in the entire Bath are basically from the University of Bath and the Bath College for that matter. So ideally, what I'd like to say is when you already have a huge inflow of so many students coming in every year, I feel University of Bath already has a very strong hand to play when you guarantee a minimum number of sales, because like at this point nobody really like ideally they buy individual bus passes rather than buying monthly bus passes for
I
that
have
matter.
to stop you there, sorry. Thank you. I will pose the same question lastly to Leo.
Okay, I think this is really interesting. I think the heat map is really interesting, but I think everything that's been proposed is interesting. I think really the principal idea here, in my opinion, is about the university's actions with the bus companies. Like Angus said, we won't be able to change the bus fares, and bus fares might increase. Yes, this is a national issue that will be addressed, and we should campaign nationally, but in terms of our initiative, I think it's the most important thing. When it comes to, for example, the interest-free bus pass loan, that's something that people don't know enough about. We have that, and that is currently, it was a trial, a pilot, and it should be expanded to more students. But what I propose really about this is the points-based bus pass with cashback. That's something, initiative that we can propose to the university with our influence, with our hand, like Reggie said, and it's something that will give more ownership to finances to students. You get cash back if you don't use up all your points, and each point is a ride.
That's time. Yeah, perfect. That will go to Dennis.
So you sort of quickly glossed over actioning this nationally. What does that look like in practice to you?
The national aspect is more about campaigning nationally for lower bus fares and caps. Like there used to be a £2 cap on bus fares 2 years ago, and then it got thrown out. I guess now it's £3, but every single university is dealing with this issue. These are companies that are private, that have a lot of influence over students, and they abuse it. And so continuously telling the government about this is important.
Thank you very much. Do we have time for closing statements? Yeah? I'll give just about 30 seconds to each candidate. I'll just go down the line, if that's okay. Just give your final closing statement, the point that you want to bring across, just 30 seconds. So I'll start with you, Leo.
Everyone here has a voice, and everyone here has a vote. It's really important that we use that vote to decide someone that will support you and invest all their time to stand up for what you deserve. Affordability and your mental health is important. Supporting you to reach your full potential is important. So vote me, because I will support you.
Thank you very much. Angus?
Yeah, I think one thing we haven't touched on at all is just the core running of the SU, the engine room, the board of trustees, staffing, budgets, organisation development. This is stuff that takes a lot of time to learn. I've been doing this for the past year. I've been heavily involved in running the SU, so not only do I have that knowledge and understanding, I know how to pack on. I won't be spending the first 3 months learning. So the key thing there is if you want someone who understands the process, understands how to make this change off the bat, as well as making those massive changes, challenging where it needs to happen, knowing when to speak up, knowing when to hold it back. I know all that. I know what I can do. I'm confident in my ability, and I hope that you will have your vote of confidence, and we're really excited to see what comes the opportunities ahead.
Thank you. Dennis?
So this was pretty obvious from the debate, but I think an issue that we've highlighted as one of the most important ones is transparency and getting messages across from the SU and the university to students timely and accurately. And that's obviously something that I've built my campaign off of to a large extent. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And then Jets?
Thank you very much. So I think, again, as we've discussed, there's potentially a lack of representation for students from the SU. I think a big point that I found from talking with people is that they think the SU is only a plug in the tub. But for me, I want to put the union back in the SU. I want to focus on the student community, lowering housing costs and combating cost of living, and making the SU more accountable and transparent. Again, Leo brought up, we will have a vote, listen to what we're standing for and vote accordingly. I think I have an amazing understanding of what students want and a great understanding across many different parts of the university through my roles as Leap Mentor, Summit, and Student Ambassador, and I want to bring that to the role. Thank you very much, and please vote.
Thank you. Then lastly, Rajit.
So my entire campaign is based on honesty and accountability. So I would, rather than lobbying votes, rather than asking people to just like vote for me or something like that, I would reinforce people to just like vote for the candidate they truly believe in and be involved in the process rather than, just like maybe like coming up with any fancy Instagram post that might catch your eye that you might vote on. But just ask yourself, who do you actually believe in for this job?
Thank you very much. I think everyone did a very good job. I hope the candidates enjoyed it. I hope our audience had a really good time, heard some interesting points. So thank you very much, guys.